assessment using remote sensing technologies. We're really happy to be able to welcome my good friend and colleague, Tab Troxler. Tab has an interesting background. He's not just one of our subject matter experts and instructors at NDPTC. He's also been an emergency manager and has worked in the private sector and public sector. And right now he is the assessor for St. Charles Parish. And we are really delighted to have Tab here because among his many, many talents, he's also a great fisherman, hunter, pilot, cook, or chef.
Right.
I'm so glad. I wish you were here in person. But again, I'd like to hand it over to Tab before I welcome Tab, we also have the chair of the National Domestic Preparedness Consortium, Dr. Van Romero here, who's doing his site visit of our center this week. And also my good friend and colleague from New Zealand, Professor Sia Utu, who's a community psychologist that works on hazards. And so welcome, Van and Sia Utu.
Yeah? Thank you.
Yes. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Tab and maybe give us a little bit more background in terms of what you're doing these days and your topic for today.
Okay, yeah. So I think you covered a good bit of it, Carl. And I've my primary background, despite what you see on the screen here, is really been in emergency management, both the public-private sector. I was a Homeland Security Emergency Director in St. Charles Parish for a number of years, and I went on and became the Emergency Services and Security Lead for the Dow Chemical Company. And part of that was a response to the earthquake and tsunami and the subsequent nuclear incident at Fukushima, and where I was the incident commander for the company. We had a site in Soma, Japan, which is about 20 miles from Fukushima, and it was directly impacted by both the earthquake, the ensuing tsunami that came thereafter, and in the days after the event, obviously the radiological event that occurred with Fukushima. So I was selected to go and lead our company there to recover that site, and so that was one of the incidents. And obviously, I was here for Hurricane Katrina. I had served as the chairman of the Southeast Hurricane Task Force, where I worked on evacuation plans and contraflow. And most recently, I'm still serving in that capacity of the subject matter expert for the state of Louisiana for the Louisiana Legislative Evacuation Committee, which we're looking at evacuation plans following Hurricane Ida. And that leads us right on into what I want to talk about today. As Carl was saying, that's all my emergency management background. But back in October 2011, I got elected. We elect our property tax assessors in Louisiana, and I'm one of 64 of those. And if you're not familiar with St. Charles Parish, it's a suburb community just west of the city of New Orleans. Carl will tell you, I mean, we're 15, 20 minutes from downtown, not very far, very near the New Orleans International Airport. In fact, a portion of the New Orleans International Airport actually resides in our particular parish. And by the way, I always like to throw this out. If, we're the only state in the union that has parishes and not counties. And the reason for that, for example, I'll namesake here, I could take you to a community not far from where I am now, in Destrehan, and the Catholic Church there is St. Charles Borromeo Parish. And what happened is the civil authorities took on the Catholic parishes, and we stayed with that. And for the most part, the Spanish explorers, as they brought Catholicism in, it was through the Catholic Church that a lot of the civilian birth records and other records were kept. So again, when Louisiana became a state, we just kept parishes. And so they went from church. So we actually have a church parish, St. Charles Borromeo, and we actually kept that name as our civil government. So anyway, Louise, that's kind of a unique thing. You could tell somebody, why Louisiana has parishes now because of our deep Catholic religion here. So anyway, currently, again, I got elected in October of 2011, and I am the current and future property tax assessor. And it's been amazing in the years that I've been doing this, 11 and a half years, how many times the two fields, which we would never think would cross, but they have crossed on numerous occasions, and Hurricane Ida being one of those. Now, if you don't recall, Hurricane Ida was a storm that came in on August 29th of 2021. It was a Category 4 hurricane, just shy of a Category 5, only 3 miles an hour lower than a Category 5. So you're talking about a storm that made landfall with 155 mile an hour sustained winds. That's a 1 minute average. So we're not talking about gusts. You had gusts greater than that, but this hurricane had sustained average winds of 155 miles an hour. One of the most intense hurricanes in Louisiana's history. And St. Charles Parish, when it was in its direct path, and we suffered greatly from it. We always had anticipated storm surge. We were very fortunate with that, but the intensity of the winds were very great. Now, my role as assessor is to go out and to value all the property within our community or our civil parish. And I was explaining to some persons today, if you really want to know the job of the assessor, the best analogy I think I've ever been given is that all of us go, and this sounds great, by the way, we all go out for dinner and we order all the food we want. And so Mel gets what she wants, Carl gets what, everybody gets whatever they want to eat. And we have a grand time. And at the end of it, the bill comes. And y'all say, okay, well, what are we doing with the bill? And y'all just point and say, well, Tab's the assessor. And I said, okay. So I get the bill, and I said, how do y'all want to split this? Y'all want to split this evenly? We're all going to pay an equal portion? And then someone says, no, of course not. We want to do it ad valorem, according to value. So you as the assessor figure out the value of our personally owned property and business and other commercial properties. And by that value, we're going to split this check. And so you're going to pay this amount, and this person is going to pay more, and this person may not pay anything. And that is really, in a sense, how the property tax assessor's office works. My job is to figure out the value of property within St. Charles Parish that's taxable by law. And in doing so, you're assigned a share of the overall expenses of local parish government. So when a hurricane comes around, it's a very interesting thing, because property is what's damaged. And I am valuing property for the sake of taxation, but the property is damaged. So now, and the time period here, you got to keep in mind, Ida came in late August, and there's a period of time under the law in Louisiana where the assessor, it's kind of a throwback to times when we didn't have technology. For 10 office days, I have to do what they call exposure of the tax roll. So in late August, it's usually my last 10 business days of August, I open up the tax roll, per se, for residents to come look and inspect it. Of course, nowadays people don't come to the office; they just go online, or there's other means in which to look at that. But that practice is still there. And when we got to day 9 of this process of what we call the open books period, this is when Hurricane Ida was approaching, and eventually an evacuation was called on what would have been the 10th day. And the parish was under mandatory evacuation. On August 29th, Sunday, very similar to Hurricane Katrina years before, the hurricane came in, and particularly our parish suffered much greater than what occurred in Hurricane Katrina. Hurricane Katrina created a large storm surge that flooded the city just east of here. In this particular case, Hurricane Ida came in and created a lot of wind damage. So what I have for you guys is a short presentation, but it's to kind of show you how and why we had to go about doing things. And as I said, it really made me cross both hats. I had a requirement under the law because properties were damaged. I needed to go back out in a very, very quick manner and revalue property after the storm. Now, typically, we do this in a period of almost 4 years. Now, all of a sudden, I'm having to do it instantaneously, basically. And any delay I had in doing the assessment would also delay revenue from all of the different taxing bodies who were starving for revenue because obviously we were going through a storm. So just kind of give you an idea, just overall of what occurred. I kind of put it, summarize some of this, but we did encounter sustained hurricane force winds for multiple hours. We had hurricane force winds and tropical storm force winds that extended beyond 36 hours. Hurricane force winds in somewhere around 18 to 20 hours. The majority of the parish's residential commercial structures had some damage of some type. But it was very different and widespread. And so for an example, and I'll show you my home here, and I'll show you some neighboring properties. My homes had a great deal of damage. I had a lot of damage here, and it put me out of my home, and you're going to see the destruction of my house. But a couple homes over, my chief deputy who works for me, he didn't have a lot of damage at all, and he's only a couple homes over from me. So the damage was widespread, but it was also varying to a great extent. There was a lot of minor damage that occurred. That was 100%. Everybody had some type of minor structural damage, awning, soffit, maybe a shed or some other auxiliary building associated with a home or business that had that. There was a lot of water damage, but it was mostly primarily due to wind-driven rain, which was what eventually got my home. I had wind damage to my roof, and eventually I had wind-driven rain into it, and then a lot of tree damage. So there was trees, particularly where I live, is very it's got a lot of foliage, and we've had a lot of trees, and a lot of those were down and actually damaged property. So that was kind of the widespread picture. But in some areas, in a very localized area, we had floodwater damage in some homes, and we even had major structural damage where we had actual roof structures actually missing, walls collapsed. We've got buildings that have fallen. It was quite an event here. So, given the task that we had to go in and basically do a survey, what I was initially told by my staff and others is that, Tab, it's impossible to do this. First off, our staff, your house is destroyed, and I've got 15 employees, and most of the employees had significant damage either to their home or to relatives or neighbors and such. And they said, it's impossible, boss, to go in here and to try to do a personal assessment. So what some of the other assessors did was across the board. They just said, okay, we're going to reduce all property values by 25%. And that would serve some very well. That would serve others not as well. I was very concerned about it being in one of the homes that had far more extensive damage than 25%. I kind of felt like the last thing I wanted someone to do was to not be assessed appropriately. And then they would have to come down to the courthouse at some point with a bunch of paperwork, trying to tell me, their elected assessor, that the home was damaged. And as I told my staff, if I wasn't the assessor, my expectation of the assessor would be that he lives in my community. Why do I have to go and tell him something that he knows is there? So I said that, no, I wanted to do a house-to-house inspection. And they said, well, that's just impossible. We can't even get around. So one of the properties we use, or one of the vendors that we use, is EagleView, which I'm sure many of you have heard of. But we use EagleView, which used to be called Pictometry, and we fly with them once every 4 years, and we do that in our reassessment years. So in January of 2020, we had our recent flights, and one of the things we do, now you won't like this as a resident, but one of the things we do when we do the residential reassessment is that we fly the aircraft over in the software EagleView through a software package called Connect Explorer, and Change Finder basically looks at all the different homes and compares using artificial intelligence and compares the home to what it was in previous years. So if you added a swimming pool on a normal day-to-day basis, it let us know, Carl's got a swimming pool. Carl added a guest home. And so this would make Carl's taxes go up because I would be putting those new values onto the tax roll. So what we ended up doing is that we knew that was a really good product. And it also let us look at before and after pictures. And what I have in this slide is just one of the examples here. And what you're going to see here is an August picture of a home. This is post-Hurricane Ida. And this was the home in February or January, February of 2020. So this is January of 2020. This is 18 months later. And so what I did is I had my staff, which was a total of 15, and myself. I had to work at 2. And then I brought in some additional retirees who worked in my office previously and some additional personnel. And we basically went through every single structure, just like you're seeing it here. And I'm going to show you that. So on the left-hand side, you're seeing the actual damage, which is post-Ida. And then on the right side, you're actually seeing the property before Hurricane Ida. Now, one of the things, being in emergency management a long time, and we were working with the University of Michigan, they were interested in doing this remote sensing and looking at damage assessment too. And they assumed that the best view after a hurricane or tornado would be to do remote sensing from the street level, to do street level views. And one of the things I told them is that we learned very early on these aerial photos were better because when you have a lot of wind damage, the area that's most likely to be damaged is the roof area. And because of that, you could determine to a much greater extent the damage of a property. Now, I don't know how much you're going to see this again, and I'm going to show you a live version of this. But if you look real carefully here, all of the bricks on this side of the home here, one of the issues here, this home is a gable roof. We know gable roofs do not do well in high winds versus a hip roof. And so you're seeing why that is. All of the bricks here are now laid out here. So this is fairly extensive damage. Plus you got a lot of the shingles that are off the roof here. We could assume by looking at this particular satellite photo that this home has substantial water damage, at least within maybe a third of the home. Because maybe these areas here did well, but this area of the home probably had a lot of wind-blown water and rain, and also with the damage here. So that's one of the things. So this is an image that was captured between September 3rd and September 5th, which was, and again, as I said, Ida came in August 29th. Of course, trying to get the plane up to fly this is difficult too, because you're dealing with severe weather even afterwards. So we had to come up with a way of calculating how we're going to go about doing damage assessment and how we were going to do this. So first off, we had what we called our Ida 4. The Ida 4 category was catastrophic damage, and we took the structure that we saw as catastrophic damage and we reduced its value by 95%. Now you may ask yourself, why wouldn't we take, particularly in that picture in the top right, why wouldn't we just go to 0? Well, in Louisiana, if I took your structure and went to 0, you would lose your homestead exemption. And because of that, you would start paying taxes on the land value. The homestead exemption is worth $75,000. So if I took you to 0, I would actually, in some cases, maybe even increasing your tax bill. But by reducing it down to 95% and leaving 5% on there for the structure, I would substantially reduce your tax bill. And having a $75,000 homestead exemption would be helpful. So we had about 531 properties. We didn't have a whole bunch of those that were totally destroyed or catastrophic, but you can see 531 properties. And a picture in the right-hand corner, that's actually a very severe situation here where the roofing and the whole structure, the walls and things have collapsed. But if you look at this middle picture, this would be a home also that we put at 95% because of how much of the roofing is lost. So not only do you not have shingles in this case, but you don't have the tar paper or the roof sheeting here. And so now you're down to the plywood. And if you know a little bit about roof construction, there are seams here and the seams are left open. So this meant that in the days after the storm, when we had an intensive rainfall, that most of that rainfall made its way in through in and around the house. So even a home like this that had pretty catastrophic roof damage would get a 95% reduction. And you see in just a picture also that we would see on the ground, from the ground level, you can see they've got a lot of repairs made to the roof. Of course, you would also see all of their personal belongings that are out there. So we had about, again, 531 properties that received this, what we called our Ida 4 catastrophic damage. You're seeing down here, we also had an Ida 3, and I apologize, this is the category 4 catastrophic. The Ida 3 major damage is the home here. I apologize for saying that. And that was like my home, and I'm going to show you my home here soon. But we had about 3,800, almost 3,900 homes that had this type of destruction, where the structural the integrity of the home was fine, but they lost a lot of the roofing. So it had substantial damage internally. So we gave it a 50% reduction. Then you had the Ida 2 properties. We see the 6,726. They received a 28% reduction. And this will be the situation where you see an Ida 2 assigned to that property, where we've had extensive damage to the roof in terms of the shingles, but the roof sheeting underneath, or the tar papers, as sometimes it's referred to, that was in place, and so much of the flooding didn't take place. But you did have minor flooding inside of this home, and again, this whole roof would have to be replaced in terms of its materials. So that received a 28% reduction. And then you had 3,800 properties we considered to be minor damage. They received a 19% reduction. And what we were looking for here, and you can see by looking at the roof, that there are areas here where the shingles are removed, and there may be some additional damage in and around the structure. And then you'll see this in my chief deputy's home. We had about 5,000 properties that were just minor cosmetic damage. So this is your soffit, maybe some minor losses to aluminum siding or other type of material, but more decorative than structural, and also protective. So when we did all of this too, we also decided that there would be an Ida 0, and we still gave with Ida 0, all land values in the parish went down by 10%, because I didn't want anybody to say, well, you helped my neighbor, but you didn't help me. Since everybody went through the storm, we assigned Ida 0 to homes that, for the most part, made it through with relative issues, or very, very small, insignificant items, maybe a couple broken shingles, a little minor damage here or there. So these homes here are examples of where there was just minor damage, and they ended up receiving about a 10% reduction in the land values. Just showing you a little bit more details how this works out. Those are the 4 structures, and I just kind of want to give you some of the criteria behind it. So in Ida 1, where we have minimal shingle damage, so we consider that small patches. 10% of the shingles were missing, and that would give you a Ida 1 damage. There would be some damage to outbuildings, but not main structure. So in some of these places here, you're seeing a little bit damage to the actual structure, but here's the one of the outbuildings, and it has more substantial damage. You may even have damage to fencing, like you're seeing here in that area here. We consider this, but again, mostly this roof's intact, and this structure is in fairly decent shape, so it got an Ida 1. In the case of the Ida 2s, now you're starting to see a little more significant shingle loss, more widespread shingle loss. The roof may have large patches of shingles removed. The roof deck is not visible, though, so meaning that we're not seeing bare plywood. So that's one of the key features between the Ida 2 and the Ida 3. No structural damage that we can tell visually by looking at the home. And then if the home is entirely tarped, the level 2 will be applied, and we're assuming that there's no structural damage underneath. Ida 3, which turned out to be what my home was, there's visible structural damage. We're seeing that in the picture over here, where the actual roofing material, not only roofing material, but the plywood beneath the roofing material that goes to the rafters is destroyed and removed. This home here, unfortunately, as I said, there's a great deal of tree damage. This home has a large tree that's going to create a lot of structural damage to that home. This home here, same thing, where you've had, while you didn't have the structural damage, you've had the exposed plywood here, meaning that there were probably large amounts of water that got internal to the home. And so that was an issue too. So all of this basically meant that it was very, very costly to repair. And again, it got one of our higher levels at Ida 3, what we called it. And Ida 4 were those for the what we consider to be catastrophic, basically tear down situations where the home, because of the structural damage, was so significant, it had to be torn down. So we're seeing a home here. This is actually in my neighborhood, so there's a new home sitting there today. This is another area not too far from here that had that type of damage. And even this home here, because the water was blown into the insulation and some additional structures inside the roof here was actually damaged. So it got a Ida 4. And some of the key features there: catastrophic damage, structures unstable, remediation costs will exceed the replacement costs, significant sidewall, roofing structures missing, or in this case, destroyed, and in large areas open to the element. And all three of these pictures would show that. So this is what it all turned out to be. And, we looked at, there was 19,539 properties that had to be reviewed. And again, what we did, I'm going to show you the software. We went in and individually scored each one of these properties and gave it a designation. So Ida 4 being the worst. And you can see only about 3% of our properties were at the catastrophic level. But at the major damage level, that was 16. So basically 20% of our properties, 1 in 5 properties, were very significantly damaged. Or you can look at it and say from moderate to catastrophic. We've had just nearly half of our properties, more than half of our properties, were at a moderate to a catastrophic level. Minor was 20%, and then cosmetic, we had about 27% of those properties were what we consider cosmetic and minimal. In those cases, what I can tell you, those properties had hip roofs. I can tell you a lot about construction now. A hip roof, they had a recent roof, and or they had a fortified roof. That's what makes up that 27%. So from a damage mitigation going forward, having a new roof put on recently, within 5 to 10 years, and or having a fortified roof, this is where most of those homes that ended up in minimal category. Also, a real good indicator, kind of talks how building codes work. There were substantial building code changes made after Hurricane Katrina. And also what I will tell you is homes that were built after Hurricane Katrina, which is not mine, but homes that were built after Hurricane Katrina, for the most part, landed in this category here. And the only exceptions being those with gables and not hip roofs. All right, I'm going to change this up and show you the actual software. All right, I'm going to have to go back here and then come over here. All right, are you guys seeing this? Let's see, did I share that?
Not yet.
Okay, all right. So this was unfortunately my home. And as you can see here, this would have been, this is a picture in 2023. I'm going to go back and show you my home prior to the storm. So this is January 19th, 2020. See if I get a little bit better picture there. That's a 2016. And because I'm using the internet too, it's taking a little time to get the pictures to come in. But this is my home in 2020. I'm not having the best resolution here because I'm using a lot of bandwidth. But what you're seeing here is that this home was intact, and you're not seeing a lot of damage. This is a much better picture of that. And so here's the picture from this February. So now my home has been repaired, and I've got all new roofing, and in fact, as we speak, all of my yard is being resodded and everything else. Let me go back and see if I can pull up a 2020 picture here from that particular angle. Well, let's just try the 16 too. It might give us the 16 images. Let me go and get the January, February of 2020. There we go. So we're getting a little better resolution here. So this was my home prior to the damage. So a couple things to take a look at. Notice I've got this big tree here. Of course, it doesn't have a lot of leaves on it because we're in January with this particular picture. See if I can rotate this. Yeah. So this was my home prior to the storm. And I've got a lot of trees back here. I've got a large tree here, and mostly important, I have a roof. If you look to the right hand side here, this picture was taken about 5 or 6 days after the event, and you can see I've got a lot of personnel already working. I mean, look at my debris pile right here in front of the home. I've had substantial this tree right here. Notice this big tree in this picture here. It fell. It actually fell into my neighbor's yard, so I had a big hole. I had to remove that. That's most of that tree that you're seeing here. Here's all of my damages. All my damaged property that I'm starting to bring out. I even got a dumpster for it, but you can see my roof, my on my garage, and even on my main home. Much of this is destroyed. And Carl, you've actually been here before for a couple of crawfish balls, and I've got this beautiful patio outside, and it's just overlooks the golf course and all of this. I mean, it was just totally wrecked. I mean, it was nothing. It was unrecognizable. I had some really beautiful trees back here. I had lost all of those trees. So luckily, again, all of those actually fell away from the home. There was a very strong east wind, and so a lot of damage had occurred on this side of the home here. This side here and this side here. It's very, very strong, sustained east winds. But anyway, we were able to go from property to property, and you're able to go in and take a look and just kind of show you the variability of the damage. This here is my chief deputy. He's only 3 homes from me. And as you notice, this was his home in January of 2020, and this is his home in September 4th of 2021. And so right after the hurricane, and so notice, I mean, he's got very little damage, and he's just right down the street from me. One of the things is that he had just replaced his roof. So his roof was brand new. So he didn't suffer any of the damages that I did. If you look over this home here, its roof was a little more dated, and you can see it actually suffered a lot of damage to its roof and some of these other areas, to some of the outbuildings. I'm going to zoom out and show you some other properties that were significantly damaged in my neighborhood. There was some catastrophic home damage as well. And I've got to just get over this way. And I can show you a couple of homes that were just completely destroyed. And this is, I think I just saw it. You can see some fairly significant damage here. And one of these homes, there it is right here. So you wouldn't want to be them. So here's this nice, beautiful home. This is what it looked like in January. And here comes Hurricane Ida. And of course, this would get the Ida 4 designation because it's got severe structural damage. So I thought this would be kind of interesting, since I've given you guys a little bit of what we have done. I thought we might play around with some of this. So what do you guys think about this home here? What kind of damage you guys would give that? So remember, Ida 4 is structural damage. Ida 3 is where we're having greater than 50% of the roof. And remember, with Ida 3, we need to see exposed areas. Ida 2 would be a lot of shingles, but not where you would not be able to see the decking of the roof. So what are you guys seeing here? What do y'all think? Put it in text or whatever. So anyway, that would be, if you were just kind of guessing, this would be like an Ida 2 right here. So this one would be an Ida 2. But again, you can see that they had a good bit of damage with it. We've got other homes. Here's a good example here of a home that had a fairly brand new roof. And you can see it's only got minor damage. And in that picture, if it stops moving, in that picture, you can see just some siding and soffit that was missing. And I'm going to take you to the courthouse where my office is. And show you the significant damage we had there. Though since it was a public building, we weren't focused on it because it's a property that's exempted. by property tax. But I'll show you the damage to that particular property. So this is what that's what the parish courthouse would typically look like. And you're going to see up here that as I rotate this, you're going to see a great deal of damage. A lot of this is picked up too, because I've got pictures where this looks much worse, but it lost a lot of the roofing. And again, my two fields cross over a good bit. So much of the damage inside of the courthouse was because of the loss of the roof and a lot of water damage. Putting my emergency manager hat, which my staff hates when I do that, before the storm came in, I made them cover everything in my office under tarps. And they were like, "Are you crazy? We've got this probably the most structurally sound building in the whole community, and you're making us come in here on the first floor and put all of these tarps." This is they were frustrated with me. And then of course they were telling me storm's not gonna come here anyway. Well, of course it did. And when the courthouse suffered this severe damage, I was one of the few buildings or few offices that was basically able to remove the tarps and kind of get back to business fairly quickly. So this I just can't tell you enough about us putting that together and really spending a lot of time and focus on the roofs itself and looking at the shingles and being able to come in and make assessments. And I'll show you over here while we're off in this direction. I'll show you older subdivisions versus newer subdivisions, and this makes a big difference. So in this particular area here, we're going to look at a subdivision that has been there for quite some period of time, and you're going to see more damage in these areas here. So this will be the side that has a damage. So notice the number of blue roofs, and in here you're going to see some significant damage to these properties all through here. This is an older subdivision. Well, actually, this one here is actually new. Let me back out. This is the older area right here. So we've seen some significant damage. And again, I got a little lag time, so that sometimes it's hard to work this while I'm showing it. But anyway, in this older subdivision, we had 4 more damage to roofs and structural damage, and we had more trees down than to other areas where the homes were in a newer subdivision. And so this is a good example of this thing. Would stop just for a second. So this is the older subdivision here. You had a lot of trees that were very mature, and we saw a lot of damage there. We did see a lot of damage in a new subdivision, but it didn't have very many mature trees, so we didn't have as much structural damage there. Also, in this particular picture, you're gonna see some damage like you see here. But this is the eastern side, so a lot of homes along here got damaged. But there are a lot of homes in here with some pretty complex roofing, and they made out okay. By the way, that red that you're seeing there, that's what we use the program typically for, a change finder. That red, we would fly the community, and when we do reassessment like we're doing this year, when you fly the community, it would instantly tell us, "Hey, Lydia just built a new house over here." So this is, here's Lydia's house, and she didn't report it to us. So this would cause my staff to go out there and do some work. I want to show you another a website real quick, and this I can credit Carl for, because Carl was having some persons come down anyway with Site 360 to do some work. And when he mentioned that, I said, "Well, you don't have to." Carl was asking me if, where there's damage. I said, "Well, you don't have to go very, very far, because the damage is right here." And let me just pull that up real quick. All right. Oh, site tour. I'm looking at let me just put this in here and it'll come up. So one of the other great things, and I'm glad Carl had reached out to me because we were able to do this, is that in addition to having the overflight, we were able to have this application too. And let me put the /SCP on the end of this, and that should take us to our photos. And this is going to take shouldn't take very long, but it should be coming up here. But with the Site 360, what they're able to do, which was a tremendous help to us, is basically it's kind of like the Google Street View, and they were able to go out and pretty much almost real time as they were going out and working the roadways, we were getting this information coming in directly to us. Now, this would give us the street view. And what I really wanted to tell you about that, and I'm not sure if it's going to, again, I've got a lot of bandwidth I'm pulling down between, working at Live Connect assessment and also doing this. But as I told the University of Michigan, who wrote a paper, again, they were thinking that the most effective manner to do damage assessment would be from the street. And I was showing them, and I didn't put that together for you guys, but what I was showing them was that when you look from the street, you could not get a good sense of the damage to the roof. And so a lot of times a home from the street actually looked like it wasn't damaged, but then I would go over to the pictometry, and you would see that the damage to the roof was much more, and you could see it better, and it was fairly substantial, and so they actually changed much of what they had. But this was set up for us. This was just fantastic. And Carl, I don't know if you ever had a chance to really see this, but this was really fantastic. Where this is the before picture, and this was the after picture. So what we did, we superimposed Google Earth Maps, and then we took the Site 360 and put that into one application. So just like you had with the Eagle View, where we had the before and after, we were able to get the same thing here. So I'll just advance up this street. And you can see in this street, now this came maybe a week afterwards, because obviously these streets had to be cleaned before we could even go in. But we were able to look where this was helpful is that we were able to look, and I see some over here. So what we're seeing at first is vegetative debris. By the way, that is by far, that's what's going to be moved out first. But when we come over here, and I'm going to show you, just looking at the debris on the side of the roadway here, okay? The house doesn't look necessarily substantially damaged, but you can see here, this is all of their personal belongings. And this is at 313 Wade. And so if I come here, we can go directly to that. So the combination of these two tools was just fabulous. Because now we're going to see. So this is the home for Wade Street. So this is what was before, and this was what happened after the storm. And so even this doesn't look too necessarily, it's not terribly bad. And we would probably be on the edge between an IDA 2 and an IDA 3 here, trying to decide. But then when we go back and we look at the 360, are y'all seeing this? Are y'all seeing the Connect assessment? I'm showing the aerial images now. Are y'all seeing that, or y'all seeing the Site 360?
The aerial image.
Okay, good. Now I've got to figure out what there it is over here. So this is that same home. So if I go here, here's the aerial image. Again, we can see the staff would have had a hard time. This is almost like an IDA 2, IDA 3. But when you come here and you look at the Site 360 on the ground level, we can tell there was significant interior damage by looking at the debris field in front of the home. So this would have been the difference between this home being an IDA 2 and IDA 3. And the other issue too is that when we look at the Connect assessment here, they had already boarded this up, so it's really hard to get a good understanding if this roofing material is gone and if it's down to the actual plywood. So when those things would happen, we would go back and then we would look at basically your Google Street or the Site 360 material, and we were able to see. So you're able to move. And I'm operating on a little surface, but obviously in my office I had multiple screens and I had multiple applications going on. And so what ended up occurring, let me just give you the final result of this. So we were able to do all the properties. Typically we would send the tax collector, which is the sheriff, would send property tax bills out in December. Because of this process and the damage because of IDA, we could not get the tax bills out in December. But we were able to get them out and have them payable by February. The other thing that we were able to do, instead of having large numbers of persons come to my office seeking relief, what we told them is that we had done this process. And then we went to my website. By the way, let me just show you this. This is the other part. We would tell them to go to my website, and they would go to the assessor's website, and this might just be too much for this thing at this time. But basically, they were able to go and look at their property, and they were able to look at their assessment. And so I'm going to pull up mine. Now this is going to be my current, but you would go here and do this, and you would pull up your parcel and you look at your details. And in here, now this would be a normal tax assessment that you're going to see here. But oh no, so mine. So here's an example. My home was valued a little bit more than 500,000, and right now I still have my IDA damage from, because January 1st of 2023, my home was still damaged. So this is actually my reduction of value. It's only got my home, the structure, only at 100,000. This year, painfully for me, it'll go to like 535,000. So it's going to substantially, but you would go here and you can see the reduction in your value, and if you were comfortable with that, you didn't have to do anything. And the vast majority of the residents, and I showed you, we had 19,000 properties. We probably maybe had 3 or 4 dozen people that actually came in and actually had an issue with the valuation we placed on a property, because they were able to come here, look at it, and because of the work we did, both with the aerial and the Google Earth maps, our assessment of the properties were fairly accurate. And so that was very beneficial because we're able to get the assessment process done quickly, and at the same time, we didn't have as many residents have to come forward, which was a benefit to them and to us. A couple other things happened out of this. So the University of Michigan took interest, and they wrote a white paper on what we've done here, and it's very interesting to go and read. And I'll send that out. Maybe Mel or Lydia can send it out to everybody. It's a maybe 5 or 6 page. It's kind of interesting on their take from what they have seen. They were into the process of doing some research on damage assessment using remote sensing, and everything that they saw and experienced with us changed their mind completely from a street level view to now knowing that either a drone or aerial aircraft, that would be the best way. Additionally, we also won the Bureau of Governmental Research Award for 2021 or 2022 for the work that was actually done. And here, this is our annual report. I'll pull it up real quick, and you'll get a chance to see that. We're very proud of that. So the Bureau of Governmental Research here looks for, again, this might be a little too much for this. The Bureau of Governmental Research looks for innovation in government, and that's the award that we ended up winning. And if it comes up here, this is an annual report I put, and so you'll see pictures here if it does come up of things. Let's see here. Yeah, like I said, it's struggling with all what I have going on. But anyway, so while that's coming up, I'll just take questions, comments, thoughts. But we've been very proud of the work that we were able to do. It was a time period in which my assessor's office was not, they weren't used to doing damage assessment. I was, but for a different purpose. I mean, I was always doing it for FEMA. By the way, that was really important for my emergency operation personnel in my old office. I mean, the data that I was able to give them, basically, they didn't have to do any damage assessment. When FEMA came in, they just brought them over to my office, and we were able to show them everything and give them actual figures, numbers of homes, values, a lot of different things. So this is it right here. This was a big event. We were downtown New Orleans, excellent in government. This is for innovation for Hurricane Ida. And we had one of our local broadcasters here that gave us the award. So that was the outcome of that work. So pretty cool stuff. I get a chance to lecture on it several times a year. I've even got more than this, but I figured this was about a 1 hour gig. So
Right, right. Well, Tab, this is a great presentation, and I'm really glad to see this and to see that, these technologies are being put to use. And you need to know too that we've been continuing to work on this. We actually named it sort of after your storm. We call it our IDA, for Rapid Integrated Damage Assessment Tool. But because our first real test of it, I think, was at least with the 360 image capture, was with Hurricane Ida. We've done other, obviously, volcanoes and flooding and tornadoes and earthquakes, and of course now the Lahaina fire as well too. And part of what we were trying to do is to test this technology in different types of hazards and threats, and then integrate it with aerial imagery, satellite imagery, and so forth. There are 2 or 3 things that I think we're going to be working on and collaborating with. I mean, actually writing this up as a case is really good. But one of the things that we're working on is, can we automate this process using machine vision, machine learning applications, to be able to make it faster in terms of processing and classifying the levels of damage. The second thing that I think is really important relates to our work on recovery, because what you have there is a way of tracking the progress towards recovery, that occurs structure at a time. And so we're very interested in trying to look at, now that it's been a couple years after this storm, how long it takes to recover, and then how does that relate to the level of damage, the type of damage, the other types of conditions that we can glean from this. And so I think there's a lot more research and development work involved in this, and obviously some training and capacity building to spread these technologies over. I don't know, Mel or others, can you see if there are other questions or comments that came in that we want to turn to? Oh, go ahead, Van, in the room here.
So, my question is, do you factor in people's insurance coverage when you do this? The reason I asked the question is, in where I live, a number of years ago, we had a tremendous hailstorm. It ruined our roof of my personal home, but it was covered by insurance. The house was about 20 years old, had a 20-year-old roof. It was almost a godsend that the hailstorm came through, ruined my roof. Insurance company came in, replaced it. My house was actually more valuable after the storm than before. Does that factor into your analysis at all?
Okay.
well, so the initial damage assessment, it would not matter, because from an assessment purposes, I'm there to determine the value of your property as is. Now, just like my community's finding out, is that this year's reassessment, once every 4 years, we do a reassessment. So my home value is much higher. It's totally remodeled and everything else. My home's value is probably about $200,000 more, just like you're suggesting, than what it was prior to the storm. My home was probably worth about $315. Now it's worth about $515. Some of that's inflation, some of that's the housing market, but a lot of it has to do to the fact that I've made tremendous improvements throughout the home.
Great. Great. Other questions or comments? Somebody waved their hand right up there. Who is that? Go ahead, speak up. Go ahead.
I have a question if you've had any experience with cob housing. I've been reading about these cob houses that are made with clay and they're very like round structures, and it was saying how they withstand earthquakes and wind, and I mean, it sounds kind of amazing.
Yeah, so we haven't had any of that here. The largest threat to us here, which we didn't experience, is actually storm surge. What I fully expected to have happen to my home was about 10 feet of water in it, and have the whole home replaced. But for the most part, the home was entirely replaced, except that the structure itself, the studs and things like that were kept. But everything else had to go out the house just because of how much water damage I had from the.
Can you bring up Answer the question.
But we don't have those types of structures here, so I couldn't tell you on a individual basis about. But
Have you heard of it? Have you? Because I'm
I
reading that
have,
they
I have.
withstand a lot of different disasters.
Yeah, I have, and I have not heard the term Cobb, but I have heard of. I mean, I've looked at from Hurricane Katrina to even more recent events, or even events around the world. I've consumed a lot of reading on disaster stuff, so I've kind of heard of some of that.
Thank you.
I see Barbara Spalding has a question. Barbara? Can you read that?
Yeah.
Barbara's you answered it. Let's see, where was my question?
was tied to the IA and PA
Right.
acceptance.
Oh, I was curious about whether FEMA would accept damage assessments for individual assistance or public assistance, but you already addressed that. So
Yeah,
thank you.
we did use the data from the data that came out of my office did go to the emergency management office, and they did use that to apply for or to help them get individual assistance. Though, but a big event like that, it was pretty much a guarantee.
That saved them a lot of time and effort. Thank you.
Oh, I did, because I used to be in that role, and so I knew the documents we handed over and the data we had was very helpful.
Good question.
Yeah. So Tab, this is Eric Yamashita from NDPTC. I think I talked to you before about your Eagle View. About you mentioned every time there's a Category 2 storm, you refly.
I'm listening, Eric. Hang on, I'm gonna let my dog out because it's going crazy. Here, Kiko. Out. Here, come on out. All right, sorry about that.
So you mentioned that you do after a Category 2 storm, you would have Eagle View refly the imagery. I mean, you might have said this at the beginning, but how quickly do you do your assessment of your whole parish?
Yeah, so that's a great thing that you bring up. So first off, one of the things that I had done when we did the contract with Eagle View is to make sure there was a disaster piece to it. So they will fly it for Category 2 or greater hurricane, and that's actually already in my contract, so it doesn't cost me anything. We actually put that in, knowing that we're in a vulnerable area. And then the timing of it, they're able to mobilize very quickly. And the biggest issue we had was dealing with weather. That was the biggest issue. Being able to have the cloud cover and all the associated weather there after the storm to have that pass where we were able to actually get good images. That was the most difficult task.
Yeah, because I know several when I talked to the Eagle View vendor at one point, they said they were getting more into the artificial intelligence, machine learning, which you mentioned. But I know there's a lot of people using like recognition for blue tarp on roofs, right? So something that could speed up your assessment time if they have the imagery, actually, I guess.
Yeah, we've met with Eagle View after this, and obviously one of the things that we still had to do manually is that while we had this technology, every single home was looked at individually by an individual. And the AI only gave us the change factor, so it outlined some homes and things, but it didn't outline damage. But now Eagle View has changed their product, and they actually do have a damage assessment one where there's a lot of artificial intelligence that's used to identify things. So that would definitely make it quicker and more easily adaptable in some of these large scale disasters.
Yeah. Other questions, comments? Go ahead, Kirsten.
Hi, thank you so much. This is really fascinating. How many other municipalities or any regions use the technology? Are you aware, Carl?
Or parishes
So-
even.
Yeah, so we were the only ones to employ this, though. In fact, just earlier today, I'm going to be giving a presentation in September. So I probably have done at least a dozen or a dozen and a half of these types, presentations in person to other assessor offices and just a handful of emergency management officials. The emergency management officials really like it because they don't understand the assessment office and what the assessment office has in terms of data to begin with. And so when I tell them, hey, you need to go see your assessor because this is the data he or she has, that's really important. And so they learn a lot there. And a lot of the assessors just have no clue that, how important the data that they have is important in a disaster. But very few. I think the numbers, I think the percentages are very low still relative to the number of communities that experience disasters.
Yeah. So why did you go with Eagle View? Are there other competitor organizations that fly this that you researched or have heard about?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So the thing about Eagle View was that's who their technology and software and use of artificial intelligence helped me on a day-to-day basis. So we selected them because of what they provide for us as an assessor's office day to day. But that caveat I put into our contract to say that they would fly after the disaster proved to be very beneficial, not only for us, but to them, because now that's something that they do quite often for coastal communities now.
Right. Yeah. This is very interesting. Yeah. And so we're interested in that, obviously, for other hazards, other wildfires, volcanoes, and then other climate-related hazards and threats. So, but again, Tab, this was a really excellent presentation. We're going to follow up on a number of the fronts that I mentioned to you all. And so I'd like to, again, thank you for presenting and for continuing to share your good work and experiences, and hope that we can catch up in person sooner rather than later.
We'll do that at some point. Yes.
Yeah. All right. So with that, I'd like to bring this third Thursday to a close with a nice round of applause for our presenter, Tab Prospect.
Thank y'all very much. I see a lot of hands clapping. I can't hear it, but I see them. So great.
Yeah. Great. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Aloha.